talk about a few things. I'm gonna have a little fun as well. Now, here's the thing. I always sit back and say, I want to do a show that if I was your uncle or your cousin or your brother, and you was to call me on the phone or you was to come past my house, what advice would I give you? A lot of times, what happens is you don't really realize just what advice you could receive because a lot of times we don't ask people the questions. So when you have yourself in a situation, and if you are listening right now on Spotify as well as if you're on YouTube, I want to welcome everyone. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the button, send your questions in. I'll address those questions. They could be business questions. If you have a life question, if you have a life question, but go ahead and ask it. Put it in the comment section right now. Go ahead and text that number 402 If you got a question, we'll go ahead and we'll address that as well as we're doing this live. But here's the thing, most of us don't have someone that we talk to that no one knows about. Now, I'm not referring to someone that you talk to just because you got something to complain about. I'm legitimately talking about somebody you're talking to because you need some sound advice. I'm not referring to a banker, a lawyer, an accountant. Not talking to you about your employees, your banker, your lawyer, and your accountant, and your employees. Not talking about that. Here's what I'm getting at strictly. And I'll give you an example. So let's take a position. I don't have a basketball, I don't have a football, but let's say this though. Okay, let me show you what I mean by giving some sound advice today on the show. Again, if I have a basketball and I bought it from a store, Walmart, Shields, any athletic store, you can assume that basketball itself probably going to cost you between 15 to about $50, depending upon the type of basketball it is, right? If it's NBA, it's going to be on the higher end. If it's a cheaper basketball, it'll be on the lower end, especially if it's rubber. Now, keep that in mind. Now, in my hands, it's only worth what I cost. But if you take that basketball and it's in the hands of Steph Curry, Thompson, Butler for Chicago. I mean, actually, he's not Chicago. He's down. He's down there in Miami Heat. You look at the Bucks star. You take anyone in the NBA, the Celtic stars that they have, that basketball in their hands is worth millions. LeBron James, anywhere between 90 to $100 million. If it's in the hands of Steph Curry, 200 to $300 million. Thompson, 100 million. I mean, that's just the reality of it. At one time, LeBron James was $300 million. Sorry, that is in his hands. Now let's take a football. You could put that football in a lot of quarterbacks' hands, but I'm gonna go an old school guy first. So if we take it in perspective, and you put it in the hands of Tom Brady, who retired, that's worth millions, 50 to $100 million. In my hands, whatever it costs. Now, if you take that into consideration, a lot of times what happens is that there are items that are in your hand or in my hand, but it does not generate the same thing that you find being generated in the hands of a person who has experience and skills, constant training. Well, you got to do your mind the same way. I mean, you just need to be straight up and honest with you. If you don't train your mind the same way that the talents in their hand, now I have something that I have to give, and it's wisdom. At the same time, it could be, it's not wisdom that's just subjected to me. For example, don't run through a red light. That's wisdom that all of us know. In the process of going through a red light, there's a couple things can happen. The least of the couple things can happen is one, we get a ticket. That's the least. The second thing, we hit somebody or they hit us. The third thing, we kill somebody or they kill us. So that's wisdom that no matter what takes place, there are certain things in the society where we live that the wisdom that we get is outside of us. So we have a standard. That standard is going to be important. Now, all week I've been talking about standards. And the reason for that is whatever I'm teaching my kids at home, a lot of times I end up talking about at work. I end up talking about on the show. It's not that I'm bouncing things off my kids. It's just the reality of this. This is the week that we're talking about standards. And standards mean for any of us that are out there listening today on Spotify or you're on YouTube right now, you're watching the show, standards are outside of us. Now, we have our own personal standards, but they're within standards. For example, you want to buy a house. So you're going to have some standards to that house. However, the house has to be, there's going to be a framing, there's going to be footings, they're going to be, so in that house itself, there's going to be an opportunity where at the end of the day, there's a standard to it. The house is going to be so many square feet. The bedroom is going to be so many square feet. Now, you may ask to expand that, but no matter what takes place, the livable space is going to be expanded, but the actual space will be So if the livable space, let's say it's 1,000 square feet, and that's your bedroom, that's a big bedroom, just so you know that. But let's say your bedroom's 1,000 square feet. In the process of being 1,000 square feet, it's probably a little bit more than 1,000, because you got to put the 2x4s in, you got to put the frames in, then you got to put the power in and sheetrock. So that's going to take away. So it's a little bit bigger than 1,000 square feet, but the livable space. So it's within the standard. If you're going to play any game, if you're going to go to a gym, and if you go to a gym, they have some type of process that you got to sign in when you get there. You got to scan in, or key fob, whatever it is. There's a standard. We got to work within the standard. Now, wisdom means that it's a standard outside of us. Now, we don't have to like how I feel. We can have an opinion about it. We can have values against it. And most importantly, we can live in the culture that the culture itself says, hey, don't even follow that standard. I mean, there's a lot of things right now that the coach is telling us that it doesn't fit the actual standard. Like, it doesn't matter who you are. If you go through a red light, your gender doesn't matter. If you go through a red light, it doesn't matter if you are in a seatbelt and not in a seatbelt. It's only going to be more consequences because you went through a red light. It's just going to exacerbate the situation. So let's look at it in this perspective. Let's assume right now, as you're listening on Spotify and you're on YouTube and you're paying attention right now, let me give you some wisdom. A lot of times I ask my kids this question. I said, okay, here we get a sheet of paper, and I say, all right, let's write down and let's go a couple different scenarios. Say you make 30,000, you make 50,000, you make 100,000. Out of this money over an annual basis, how much you're going to save? And then it kind of, got to guide them a little bit. And then they end up answering 5,000, 10,000, 50,000, whatever they're going to save. And then I said, okay, you're going to save. So let's assume that since I'm doing this with you right now, you answer that question. Whatever you make, if you're watching this right now and listening on Spotify, just say what it is that you actually would do. What amount of money would that be? Would that be if you had 100,000, 50,000, or $30,000? How much would you be able to save on an annual basis based on the obligations you already made in your personal life that you have to pay each month, that are they may be longer than 12 months. You got to pay this. Mortgages are going to be 30 to 15 years and sometimes 10. If you got a car note, it's going to be anywhere between you paid it off or up to 84 months or longer, depending on if you have an exotic. These are all the things you got to think about. Now, I have 5 females and 5 males. They're on the right and on the left of me. So we got those 5. Again, 5 females, 5 males. And these individuals are here. The only thing they're going to do is this. They want to actually, this is cool. They actually want to come into your personal life, pay you your savings, and take over the responsibility of meeting your bills every month. They want to take it over. Like, you don't have to pay your bills anymore. They're going to pay you your savings, what you save. If you make $100,000 in 1 year, you make $50,000 or $30,000. They're going to take what you save after your obligations are all met. They will continue to pay your car, continue to pay your rent. Now, this is cool because most of us would love to revert back into being a child. They're going to only give you your savings. So let's assume that as you're listening right now, you decide that I have 100,000, I'm going to save 20. Cool. Let's say if you make 50,000, you're going to save 5. Cool. If you make 30,000, you say you're going to save 2. Cool. Now, after that, everything above it, if you're saving $5,000 or $100,000, that means that the cost of your life, it costs. You need 100,000 because 95,000 of your life belongs to someone else. Those obligations, no, it belongs to me. No, it belongs to someone else. You only got 5,000. If you make $50,000 a year and you only save $2,000, that means the reason you need $50,000 because $48,000 got to go to your obligations. Now, on the other side of the equation, you make $30,000 and you save another 2. Well, you need access to $28,000. This is going to be important. And I say that because when you're sitting down and you're thinking about it, just make sure it's all clear for you and me right now. It's just clear. The only thing from these 10 people, 5 girls and 5 guys, and they fighting over, I mean, you're only going to get one of them. You got a panel of 2. I mean, a panel, men and females. You can blend them up together however you want, but both of them are here. They're going to meet your financial obligations and they're going to pay your savings. Now, you have to understand, for the one who saved 20, his life is a lot more expensive. He got access to more money, him or her got access to more money, they save 20. Now, if they make 100,000 and they only save 5, and the person who actually gets access to 50 and they actually save 5, the person that actually can save 5 with 50,000 has a more and better suited to be wealthy in the long run. The person who makes 30 and he only saves 2. Now, again, I'm using these numbers. You save $2,000, it's still better than the one who makes 100,000 because the cost of a person's life, so someone to buy your life and take over your obligations, you continue to drive your car, to give you gas money as if you went all the way back to be a child. That's cheap. It's really cheap. Now, how do we grow to the point where we make it expensive for us to be purchased? Well, let me just explain to you. Most of the richest people in the world, the people who go to Davos, the ones who are sitting there and they go into the summit, and you talk about the world health, you talk about the situations where you can look at the news and say, what they're trying to do, population reduction. That's exactly correct. You see, Bill Gates state that he want everybody to be vaccinated with these diseases that they're creating in the lab, and then saying, well, we're just going to give them a there's no such thing as a virus that's all viruses are active, but they're considered dead, just so you understand. So we give you a low dose, very inactive, so you can build immune systems around it. Okay, whatever. You wouldn't know him to came in contact with that unless they put it into your body. But he has this big situation. Now, he may or may not be one of the individuals who openly confess that he wants to do population, literally just reduction of population. But let me just put it in perspective here. Some of the most wealthy people, and I mean wealthiest people in the world, are some of the baddest people in the world. Now, I'm not talking about bad like cool. I'm talking about bad as far as you would never sit across the table from them if you really knew some of the stuff that they got involved in, because it's like wicked. But at the same time, they're the most wealthiest. How is it that the nice girl, the nice guy, the person who works hard, they go to work every day, what is it so different about that individual and the person who is sitting in Davos? Well, I'm going to go over 10 things. That's right, 10 things that absolutely you need to know in order for you to be able to see how they got to that position. Now, it's interesting enough because here's the thing at the end of the day. You got to ask yourself this question. They're using, again, remember I started off with that, in their hands, their capabilities are beyond yours and my capabilities. So I looked up 10 qualities of some of the individuals that go to Davos every year. That's, the World Health Organization listens to them and they don't even have a science background. Like when Bill Gates he sat in, he became the head of the World Health Organization and he had no background. I mean, yes, he may be a billionaire, he may be smart, he got access to employees, but he dropped out of college. And people say it doesn't matter because he's a billionaire. Okay, well, that's true. He's a billionaire, so he's going to have more favor than someone else. But let's put it in perspective here. In the rules of engagement, if you don't have a license to be a doctor or lawyer or a financial advisor, you get in trouble. That's just the reality of it. So he's not getting in trouble because he got the money to pay the bills and everybody want access to money so he can influence. Take that in consideration. And let's look at the 10 things that some of the baddest people who are wealthy that have us, that again, if you put the football in their hand, for me, it's not only worth whatever it costs, what I bought it at. For them, it's billions. That's how they became the wealthy. So let's talk about the power of their experience of what's in their hands. Here it is. Number one, for a person who is bad, but yet they're wealthy, here's one of the first things that they actually have. They got ambition, they got vision. Now, you may say, well, what do I mean? See, sometimes we misconfuse the word ambition, which means I have a desire to do something. No, some of the baddest people in the world, who are the wealthiest people in the world, their ambition is actually not what you think. Their ambition is application. So the word ambition means they actually implement what they're talking about. They're not thinking about it. They're not planning all the vocabulary words we like to utilize to allow somebody else to know that we virtue signaling. They're not virtue signaling. They visionaries. So they have a vision and then they have an application and they begin to act on the ambition of the vision. And it is an implementation. Number two, they like to make decisions and then do it. So for some of us who like to word this, well, I took a risk. Well, I thought about it. I'm getting ready to do it. Some of the most baddest people who are the most wealthy people in the world, who honestly, you try to figure out how in the world, with the way that they are and the way they're destroying one another, they are the most wealthiest people because they like to take the risk. They have a vision, they got ambition that they implement it, and they like to make decisions. Risk is associated with the word decision. Decision means I made a decision for the best interest of me, not for the best interest of you. Now, a lot of us say we took a risk, which means I don't want to be responsible for that decision. That's not what they're saying. They're saying I'm going to be responsible. You can talk about me, and I'm about to do even more what I just did. That's the different position. Here's a second thing that a person does that is bad, that's very wealthy, but ethically and morally, you can't even invite them to your mother's table. You just wouldn't be able to invite them to your mother's table. And let me tell you what that is. Financial literacy. These individuals, here's the thing about, I would say, most of the people that I come in contact with, clients and associates, so all what they do is they are looking for more and more knowledge, and their feeling keeps them from implementing it. Not these guys. These guys' feelings are in check, which means I know I may not like the way it feels, but I'm about to go through this because I want to gain experience. And I really do not care about how I feel because they got this vision, they got this ambition, they want to make a decision. They're not going to let you make one for them. And they go right after taking knowledge and implementing and gaining experience because they want to know with that knowledge that they just gained, what's wrong with it. See, that's the one thing that we don't want to do. We don't want to make that decision for the knowledge because as soon as we get involved and we do that, here's our worst fear. We're going to look stupid. You know what they say? I don't care. I'm not worried about looking stupid. What I'm really doing is I'm doing this for one reason and one reason only. One, they want more money. Two is they need to know what part of that knowledge has flaws so they can make a better decision and then use it even harder and better and faster. When you and I are asleep, billionaires have already made the money for the day. We're trying to draw into the money or go out and draw the money towards us. They already made it. They're so far ahead, it's ridiculous. Because how come? They got a long-term focus. They not short-term thinkers. There's no way in the world that some of the skills that we have that is microwave mentality. You know, you put it in the microwave, ding, 2-3 minutes, your food is heated up. Sometimes it's so crusty you can't even eat it. And if you go a little too long or a little too short, the middle is a little bit still cold, like especially if you took it out of the freezer. Well, these individuals are going to have a balanced meal and they're going to have it in the slow cooker. They're not going to use a pressure cooker. Some of us use pressure cookers. I'm going to tell you this. We are very talented at resolving a problem. We need money to resolve a problem. We can ask people. We can go get it the best way we can, as long as it's moral, legal, and ethically. Now, you go get the money. But here's the number one problem that I continue to tell people. You're going to get money in the fastest way that you've never done before for yourself to take care of a situation that may be something that you needed. Maybe it's a car, maybe it's, it could be a car, it can be a situation that you may owe somebody and you borrow from someone else to owe somebody else. It could be any of those things. However, when it comes to you don't actually go get the money so you can keep it. You go so that you can keep it and leverage it. You actually go get the money to take care of something. So you don't even really have it long. It's literally from one person's hand back into another person's hands. And let me just tell you about them. They long term. They means they ain't giving up none of that. Some of the most baddest people in this world. I mean, you can look at him. I mean, if you look at George Soros, people are afraid of him. But if you look at him, some of George Soros, I mean, first of all, he is a what we would call today in Israel, he's a Jew who actually don't like Jews. I mean, if you go look at his story, I mean, if you look at his story and you base it on what he talks about, he's a very rich man, not a nice guy, but wealthy as all can get up, but not a nice guy. Because he has these standards. And I continue to tell people, again, he has a standard. He plays within the rules that generate money. That's another key. Their resilience and their perseverance, preservation. Their resilience and their perseverance sticks on two things. Everything they're doing, they're going to be able to keep more money, and they're going to not go into the categories that we do. For example, there's 3 different types of personality sets. I've said it before. If you watched our show before on CFS Studios, and if you never like, subscribe, and if you're listening right now on Spotify, make sure, I see your comments coming in. I'll answer it in a second. Make sure that you don't forget to hit the like button. Don't forget to follow on Spotify. Don't forget to follow as well on YouTube. So let's put this in perspective, okay? When you have a situation, every decision they make is for them to keep more money. It's not for them to buy something else. A lot of times for us, that's not what we do. We're actually going out. We need more money to get more stuff. We view money as leverage to go get something that we want, something that meets our feelings, something that meets our culture, something that meets our values, and something that meets our feelings. That's what we do it. Feelings, values, opinions, and culture. That's how we spend our money, but not the wealth. One of the things I learned, even though I would be honest with you, I would never sit down with George Soros in my life. I mean, he's a great businessman. He's a great investor. I mean, when it comes to investing, I mean, he brought down the euro. He shorted the euro, became rich. Everybody knows that if you look at his story. George Soros funds a lot of things. He's also behind a lot of the school systems now. And again, the school systems that we now have in place that have they're pushing a lot of these issues and a lot of these books that I won't go on the show about today. But if you watch the news, you hear about it. In California, if you don't affirm your child, they can take your child from you. So I tell you, right, if you got a bunch of kids and you don't want responsibility to them, move to California. Just stay there long enough to get your residency. Don't affirm your child, and they in the system. And guess what? All we gotta say is if you paying child support, make sure it's on your week. That way they can put them in the system because as far as I know, in the foster care system, I don't hear that the parents that put their kids in the foster care got to pay child support. But if they stay with their mother and their father, you will be paying. So go to California, you can get rid of child support. Now I don't know if that's true or not. I'm to be honest, you better look up that because I could be dead wrong. I'm just being facetious when I said it. But the reality is that's a way to get rid of your child if you ain't trying to pay child support. Now, what they would do is this. He's behind that. He's funding all of that stuff to put all these books into this from really from elementary school all the way up into about the 8th grade. They don't really talk about that many in the high school, but they do have some of the books at the local high school. That's totally what I would say shouldn't be on the bookshelf. But what are they doing? He got the money. See, he wants to make that decision. George Soros, one of the best things he does for the way he invests, he needs first of all, he needs a population that's fighting against each other. So if he can get U.S. citizens going at each other, and then you vote for a politician that he puts in office, he can actually make America go broke. That's what he really wants. I mean, if you really follow he goes from country to country, making them go broke, and he's on the other side of the trade. That's his style. Now, I only share that with you because that's the resiliency and that's the perseverance. Now, let me just tell you about this other thing that they have. Quality number 6, entrepreneur spirit. These individuals are not the entrepreneurs that we normally see when we get on the YouTube. These are not the entrepreneurs that actually do Mary Kay or Avon. If you do, I apologize. I'm just telling you, you're a placement agent and you are doing network marketing. But this is an entrepreneur that runs corporations. He owns stakes in big corporations. He has over 100,000 employees, and he has pretty much a large group of individuals that are going to actually make sure that he gets what he wants. I mean, one of the most important individuals I say that's a minority that I definitely don't have any favor towards on CNN is Van. Van is one of his big supporters, and a lot of things that he's doing destabilize the ethnicity that he represents. So I think it's very interesting, but that's George Soros in his best. He has to get it. If you're thinking about, you want to have 6 kids, he's going to figure out how to make sure you only got one. Now, with that being said, let's go to number 7. They got adaptability. Here's the one thing that the average person don't have. They're not willing to adapt. That's because their feelings, that's because their opinions, their values, and their culture, the image around them. Now, don't get me wrong. The culture should not dictate to you what you do or you don't do. However, it does for many people who put their best foot forward. Now, their best foot forward means they're not honest. Let's just be clear. If I put my best foot forward, that means I'm going to deceive you. I'd rather just tell you who I am. I got very good at just telling people who I am. That way they're not surprised when they realize I actually already told them. He is what he said he was versus, oh, I thought he was this way. If they had to put anything on the Sunday newspaper, trust me, you're not going to find out anything I already didn't tell you. So if you don't like it when I told you, it's going to be like, hey, I already knew that. So that's nothing new. He already told me that. Well, for many Americans that are middle class or poor, they're never going to be that way. They're translucent, not transparent, but these people are adaptable. You could put them in any environment and they're going to go after their vision and go after their ambition. They're going to go after their long-term focus. They're going to go after their financial literacy. They're going to go after their resilience and their perseverance, their entrepreneur spirit, and the fact that they can adapt. They're constantly training themselves at everybody they come in contact with, every conversation they have. When they get a prime time opportunity to be on the television, they got people say they have handlers, but actually they are the handlers. Some of the most wealthy people at Davos are the handlers. You take, for example, you've probably seen it on more than one occasion. And I even go this way, and I'll go 3 different ways that I touch it. You can talk about locally in the United States. We know that we have regular gangs. Then we also have organized crime, and then we see organized crime on the third factor. That's going to be either the Mexican mafia or the Italian mafia or the Russian mafia. That's evident. I mean, then you have they don't call it the mafia in the in the gang community or the African American community. But the reality is that that's really no different than a gang. A mafia is a gang. The Russian mob is a gang. The Mexicans or the El Salvadorans or the Guatemalans, they're all gangs, but they don't call them that. They call them mafias. I don't know if it's a better term for it. So we need to start calling the Black Bloods and Crips mafias because they organize just like everyone else. They got corner boys and everything else. Well, with that being said, here's the thing. They can drop in any city and they can begin to move no matter what. Where most of us will be careful, we reserve. I don't want everybody to know my business. They're out there putting their business. That's one of the biggest differences. If you try to be secretive, they're not. Now, it's even interesting when they say about the secret organization. That's nothing but a board meeting that got nothing to do with your business. I mean, at the end of the day. So when you think about a secret organization, you're really talking about a group when they meet as a collective that they have on a board meeting on what they plan on executing. And they don't want nobody stopping that conversation. But then when they hit out in the general public, it's not hard to find them. Here's number 8. This is the one that for most people, they do it the wrong way. But the most baddest people who got money, they do it the right way. Think about the way they network marketing and the way they partner. This has been something that's been always interesting to me. As I did a study and I looked at the people that Davos, when they do network marketing, building, and partnership, this is what it really looks like. Deal making. That's not when you see network marketing. When somebody invites you to go out and is going to have have a meetup at a certain, maybe at an office or at a restaurant or after hours, what they consider happy hours. That meetup is about spending money. That's not what they're meeting about. The world leaders who are just take this in consideration. What do we mean by this? If you live in America, you would say that Xi Jinping. You would also say that in North Korea, Kim Jong-un, you'll say that Vladimir Putin, you'll say all these people are bad. They had Davos with their people. I mean, regardless of what you want to admit to or say, you can say they're some of the worst. I mean, you go to North Korea, you as an American or as a Canadian or anyone else in the world, and you do something, you ain't coming out of there as one. You go into Russia and you using any form of drugs, you might as well cancel that. If you're in America right now and you're in Russia and you say the wrong thing, look the wrong way, you're going to get held up and be locked up for a while just because that's the whole situation. But they all at Davos. Now, I'm going to just tell you something. I mean, if you base it on, other things, you'll see it. When we talk about the mafia, they get together. Some of the most baddest ones, the top of their heads, they find a way to communicate unless they're trying to kill each other. And even then, they phoning each other, say, ha, 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 you miss me. I mean, you can see that. If you watch any documentary, whether it's give you 50% of the truth or not, the reality is they do talk to each other. There's no doubt about it. And it normally comes from somebody in the group who got to be biggest. Now, here's another thing, number 9. They got a positive attitude towards money. Now, I'm going to tell you something that I had to really accept. Some of the most wealthiest people who are some of the most baddest morally, they'll sell your child and eat them if they could. They got a positive view towards money. And I'm going to tell you, most people do not have a positive view towards money. Money itself, from a standpoint of view, here's one of the things that was recorded. And I'm just going to just tell you straight. I'm just going to look and just tell you straight on out. Here is the aspect about money that can't be forgotten. They know that money has to stay money, and they do not want stuff. Hard pause. They know that money has to stay money. They do not want stuff. What ends up happening is that we see the results of all the years of their long-term master plan, and we assume that they've gotten that now. So you start to covet and slob at the mouth, like, look at the car they got, look at the house they drive. They spending billions by giving money to charity. That's old money. See, that's old money. It's not new money. This is money from 40 and 50 years ago in their overall master plan. And if it is new, it's the interest off of old money that they came from their master plan. You got to understand that these individuals do not see money the way we do. Yes, you may be seeing some of the accolades from all of the work they did over the years. What takes place for us is you see a person. This is the part that's pretty cool. In America, if you're poor or you're middle class or upper middle class, what ends up happening is before you hit your retirement age, what you end up doing is you begin to live the life as if you had made money, but it's really on credit. Well, these guys are totally different. Just to be very honest with you. Again, I'm gonna tell you again, if you are in upper middle class, or you poor, you literally are utilizing the money on credit as if you made it all that. Period. But here's the interesting: in their later years, when they 80 or 90, they start living like a king then and queen. They're not living like that earlier. I don't care what you think they're doing, because all the resource points that they are minding their business with their vision or their ambition, with their long term, and they making these decisions, which is against you or me, and they're going after the one thing that we're not going after. They're going after keeping cash cash. They don't want a bunch of stuff. By the time you start seeing the stuff they have. Most of the people right now, what's happening is this, and this is a statistic: 87 people, according to the last data that had came off. You Google it, you see for yourself. Type in there, after age 72, what's the percentage of Americans that actually see a reduction in money? 87% of Americans, that's right, that's over the age of 72, see a reduction. None of these people see reductions at that age. That is, I mean, everybody works so hard and then they're in a retirement home. These individuals work so hard, and now you see their home, and their home just keep getting bigger. And they're not going to a retirement home. They're gonna get servants, and these servants gonna work for them. And they already had it built out in the trust. And these servants get paid by the trust and by the ambition. They're not worried about whether their kids want to put them in. Well, I can't deal with my parents. You are never gonna do this to these group of individuals. No, 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 no. They're gonna make sure that retirement home, you outside of that trust. That's what's gonna happen. So I tell you that because with their positive view towards money is not the same as our view towards money. You think about it right now. I mean, for somebody right now, they're running around, and if they're in high school, this is an old sharp calculator. I will get joked on. They're like, this calculator is over 10 years old. People say, well, you got a cell phone. Well, you don't need this. This is over. Now, it's funny to say it's over 10 years old, but officially, this calculator is older than that. I got this calculator when I was, this calculator is so old. It's over 20 something years old, but it's 10 years old in my hands. Before that, it was in somebody else's hands. But I got it from, they gave it to me. But the reason that I point that out is because most people now don't have a calculator on their desk. They got a cell phone in their desk. Unless they're in the accounting department, they don't have it. These individuals have calculators in their heads. They're very good at that, gaining that skill with that calculator in their head. Now, here is the other thing, though. Now, for you that are out there right now, you're saying to yourself, yeah, I do. I agree with you. A lot of people, and pardon me for the slang I'm getting ready to use, just in case, just to make sure I didn't leave none of the people out in our society. I don't care if they sell drugs. I don't care if they do anything illegal. From this standpoint here, what they are doing is they have a continuous understanding of what are the rules of money. So some of the worst people that's locked up, that's kingpins, some of the worst people that's locked up who've done credit card fraud, and they made massive amount of money, even though their morals are, again, you have individuals like George Soros, and I'm just telling you, I'm just using his name because his name is in the news right now. So I saw it before I started talking, and I was like, oh, he's up to the same thing. He's never changed, so as far as I'm concerned. But with that being said, is this: what is your view when it comes to money? You really need to think about that. Is money just secondary to your wants? Because for them, money is actually their primary thing. Their wants is second. Being able to hold your feelings, being able to hold your opinions, being able to hold your values now, and being able to hold, most importantly, the culture. They dictate the culture. They're not adapting to the culture. Right now, a lot of the unrest that we have, a lot of members of Davos, and you always will hear it. You hear the term, I didn't mention it early, but let me just go ahead and say it: the Illuminati. The Illuminati that everybody's wanting, but the Illuminati runs Hollywood. The Illuminati runs banking. What are we talking about? We're talking about the individuals that control Davos, and we're talking about the individual who control Davos, who also control those organizations. Do you think Hollywood is controlled by somebody who don't go to Davos? Because if you do, I'm not going to insult you. I'm just going to tell you, go be informed. You need to understand that those key factors, and like I said before, at the Davos situation, when they go to Davos once a year and they have the meetings wherever they're going to have them at, You need to understand that some of the people that you would normally never sit in the same room with, some of them you would though. I'm not going to say that everybody who's at Davos is a little, to be concerned, but you should be a little concerned about them because they dictate the culture. Case in point, a person who was not part of Davos, who now has made the wealth because they understood about the how to handle money. Over time, they're gonna end up going to Davos as a guest or as a speaker. What are you gonna find? Your life's gonna change. Now, we use the term now. When I was in school in New York at Truman High School, one of the things was they had metal detectors. That'll tell you what it was back in the early '90s. But at Truman High School, one of the things was that there was always a popular kid. That popular kid had two things that everybody wanted. He dictated what was in the market that you had to have. If Nike back then was I remember in middle school was the Michael Jordan came out with the movie Space Jams, and they had the Roger Rabbit Jordans. Patrick Ewing's was still out at that time. If you guys don't remember that, Patrick Ewing's. Chuck Taylors and Converse was still out there. Reebok was still very popular. Diodors was a popular back then. So these were things that were still being, and whatever they wore, everybody in school knew what it was. It didn't matter what school you went to, whether it was public, private, or anything else. There was a trendsetter there. Well, that trendsetter is also being controlled by the trendsetters. See, they're only buying, they didn't make that stuff. I mean, I ask people all the time, well, when you went to school, did you go to school with, the designers that you now see? Some of them say, yeah, I went to school with them. And I said, okay, you went to school with them. How come you're not, what's your associate with them now? Oh, they just went to school with them. They had their ambitions. Now, here's the thing you need to know about. Now that I've brought out, here are the 10 things. Now I'm gonna tell you what you can implement into your personal life that you can actually take your good standards and morals, because a lot of them don't have good standards and morals. Now, taking the information that we know. Now, how do we take that information and then implement it to our life? Let's start off with this. You have to now, I heard Peter Thiel make this statement, and I'm going to reword it the way I understand, but I'll tell you that 25% of this will be me and 75% will be him. He stated that when it comes to business, he will continue to bring different things to the market that he feels the market needs. And as he continues to bring those items, they will phase out products and services that should not be in the market. The key is he's going to bring things to the market that he thinks it needs. He didn't ask you, though. I assure you, did not get a survey from Peter Thiel to ask you, what do you think about this? I'm pretty sure that you don't have him and he don't have you on speed dial. But there's a group of people. Will Peter Thiel, if he continues to go on in life, be at Davos? Well, even though you may not know this, but Peter Thiel was behind funding Mark Zuckerberg. Now, if you think Facebook and all the things they have done to manipulate, and if you haven't, there's a Netflix series on the social network. I mean, just it's a on Netflix there is about social media, and they talk about people who used to work at Facebook and ex-employees. They won't even let their kids be on Facebook. They won't even let their kids be on YouTube. Right now, you watching on YouTube. They don't even let their kids on YouTube. That should tell you something. It should really be foundational. So what do you have to implement? You have to implement the realization that if you're going to be able to keep your money, you have to have that same philosophy. Every paycheck, you should be setting aside more cash. So let's say you started off this month and you normally save around $200. Before you know it, next paycheck roll around, you now save another 200. You got 400 for that month. We go to the next month. You say, well, I'm going to save another 200. You're up to 6. Then you get paid again, another 200. Now you got 8. I'm going to tell you, that's not what they do. What they actually do is they say, okay, they're going to start off for what they want to accomplish from the research that I've done. And then from there, they're going to take and say, okay, I got 4. How can I take this 4, turn it into 8? So when I get the 4 next time, I got 1,200. That's their mindset. Again, notice what I said. They're not going to try to save everything. They're going to leverage and make more money and have everything and dictate to you. Here's another thing they're going to do. They're never going to stop making decisions. In your life, this is a very, very important thing. People ask you questions. We only like to give our opinion when we get offended what other people do. I mean, I think that's another thing. We only want to give our opinion when we're offended. Sometimes we give our opinions because we want to tell you in advance, don't offend me. But I'm just telling you, these individuals give you their opinions to be offensive. They tell you, well, no, this is what I think. They'll tell you right now that they believe that the public school system, this is the information they need to teach. You may 100% disagree with them, but they're going to be sitting talking to school boards and the people where the school boards actually, every school board goes out and they have a company they go through to buy the books. These individuals control the curriculum. Now, you may say, we go all the way back into when we go back in the early 70s, and then you'll get the answer for that, because you got to remember the public school system was created by who? Before there was Davos, there was Jekyll Island. And if you've never seen the book of Jekyll Island, then you may want to go look that up, because you can actually see how the Federal Reserve was established. And you'll notice that it was wealthy men and their wives, but mostly men, who got together to dictate what you and I would be able to do. You need to, if you want to implement some of the characteristics, and again, taking out the bad part, because some of the most wealthiest people do some of the worst things, but they are wealthy because they have a money principle that works within the standard of the way our economy works. Now, do you have that same money handling skills? Do you implement the same thing? Well, what do? They dictate. Everything that's coming down from time that the school system has been established have been dictated by the ones who control the largest stakes. And before Davos, they were going to Jekyll Island. Now, on the other side of the equation, how do you do it? You need to start making decisions. You got to start taking risks. You got to start worrying about what somebody think about you. Here's the thing. Who cares what they think? Just as long as it's more legally and ethical, because you want to change it. So start off now in your own communities. Matter of fact, start off in your own family. Let's not go to the community yet, because you may have struggled being honest in your own family. Start off in your own family, dictating how it's going to be, period. Take over your family, lead your family. That's what they do. Their kids are not going to be going to work for nobody else but the top of the group. They're not trying to have bottom feeders. Now, a lot of us be like, well, I'm not going to get in my kids' business. I'm not going to get in their business. I'm going to let them do what they're going to do. They're going to learn their way. Not these elite families, they're not. And none of they all in their kids' business, because their kids got to abide by the standard that they're creating. And if they don't, look at Paris Hilton. I mean, Paris Hilton got her episode right on Netflix. You seen what her parents did to her? The Hilton, before they sold their hotels to Blackstone, let's just be honest. I mean, I watched that. I felt sorry for Paris Hilton, but I also know that she made some key mistakes, and the mistakes she was making messed with her family reputation. But at the end of the day, her life ain't as beautiful as everybody portrayed it to be. And as a young age, being that her father had those hotels and everything, you watch that Netflix series about Paris Hilton, and you have a little bit of empathy for her. It changes your mind about some of the stuff you saw her doing, and then some of the situations she went through by going to a private school, snatched in the middle of the night. Then the sexual assaults and everything else that she went through. And when she came back out with her and that dog was like a pacifier, keep her sane. I get it. That's what these elite families do. I mean, I would never say to myself, I got a knucklehead. I got two knucklehead sons. But I have never thought to call a private school in the middle that nobody really know about that's expensive, to come at 2-3 o'clock in the morning. I open the door and have them snatched out of bed, helicoptered to where they need to be at, and kidnapped. I would never think of that. But these elite families play that role. Not me. I mean, that just right there goes to one step before terrorism in my book. But not the elite families. How come? Because they set the standard. And for their kids, if they show any weakness, that's the thing. Their standard, there's no difference between your child and their child. They show weakness, they got to go. They're not having it. You would say they're heartless. I'm going to tell you that's part of the one factor that I don't have that they do have. They are heartless. And they are heartless because of one reason: ambition and goals. Can you be that heartless? Can you be so focused on changing community for the better, not for the worse though, that your kids or your friends decide, man, you don't have no heart, because you told them, I don't have time to be distracted by you and you getting me to spend money in a way that I don't have it. Do you and cannot be that heartless. Here's another thing. One of the interesting things is that I was talking to a business owner down in downtown Omaha, and as I was talking to that business owner, we were sitting at his establishment. I won't mention any names. And as soon as we start talking about implementing, and the first thing he said, sounds like work. Let me explain something to you. If you want to ever be at Davos, and I'm not talking about, most Americans can charge a Davos trip. It's going to be expensive. You may can't get into all the events, but you can stand outside the gate like you watching a golf tournament. You can stand outside that gate. But in the short term, let me just say this. When it comes to why the wealthy stay wealthy and they're not necessarily nicest, here's something about money that a lot of us do not understand. Is that cash generates cash. You do not have to convert it out of cash to make cash. Most of us that become entrepreneurs, how we look at money is so wrong. This is what it is. I'm gonna use this as an example. This is $1,000. I got to start a business, and in their mind, they literally believe that a laptop, or business cards is more important than cash. Let me explain to you. Not one of those guys at Davos walk around with a business card. Everybody who functions underneath the realization that they believe that's what it looked like. They've already been through that. When they first started off and they were going through the process, they had business cards. But then they understood that business cards were not generating money. Now you would say, well, if I have my business card, then that'll give them. It's a different time. No, just understand what I'm saying. They're going to keep cash. Before they spend business cards, their money is their business card. That is the number one thing I've learned from studying wealthy, bad people. You would say to yourself, how can it? One of the things about Xi Jinping over in China is that in China, like in America, at least if you bought your house, you have to pay your taxes. And when you pay your taxes, the city doesn't come and bother you. But if you don't pay your taxes, then they could actually, foreclose on your house, put a lien on it, a tax lien on your house. There's a lot of different things they can do. Other than that, they can force you to get out of it. I can tell you that, and take it from you. Well, in China, you could have had your house. If Xi Jinping wants to build a new building, or he tells the city that he wants more economic growth, you've been in that house, been in your family, they bulldoze the house. You don't have to take my word for it. You can just go Google it. You're on YouTube right now. Just type into YouTube. China's communist leaders take over citizens in different Providence homes. That's true. You see many people from the Chinese people sitting on top of their roofs, refusing to go, and they still bulldozing it, and watch this buildings collapse, and these people get seriously hurt or dead because their ambition. You think Xi Jinping care about the Chinese people? No, he uses them. The people in Davos use everybody else. And trust me, if I ever become wealthy, I have to make a decision. But if I go to Davos, I'm using you. Just understand that, because that is the system of the World Economic Forum. That is the sole purpose, is to use the people and everybody they can't use because they feel like you're invaluable and you're not. I mean, you don't add anything to society. That's one of the things about the wealthy people, is that if they can't use you, then you don't need to be here. That's one of the factors that most people don't understand. And I get it though. I get it. If you have any adult kids that live in the basement that's useless, and you can't use them, and they don't help you wash dishes, you want them out too. We just don't go to the extent of euthanization. They kind of kill people. So that's what makes it a little bit different. Now, if you want to take 3 points from today, as I get ready to wrap up this live stream for today on Thursday, it's not something we normally do on Thursday, but I just had the urge to come up and say, you know what? Some of these people don't understand, because it wasn't necessarily my mind, but it was a factor that I had to take consideration. Is, what are 3 things that the wealthy are doing that anybody can implement and make them wealthy? 1, they leverage their cash, but they keep cash. The only time that they convert cash out of cash into any other item, regardless if it's a product or service, is when they can generate more money than what they cash can generate if they keep the cash liquid. Number 2, they like to make decisions. They don't want knowledge. They want information. They want to test that information, immediately using it to find the flaws to make a stronger decision. so they can implement more money to make more cash. That's what you have to do. Every chance that you get, somebody say, "What do you want to eat?" Here's one thing to start practicing immediately. You just tell them, "Well, I don't want that. That's not my issue. This is what we're gonna eat." Since you don't have a clue, I'm gonna tell you what to do. That's the saying. This was a saying that was in a document from uh, Hitler. So that'll tell you from that regards. But that's what you need to do. And then third, don't quit. No matter what takes place. It's a marathon, not a 100-yard foot race. A marathon, not a 100-yard foot race. And I definitely appreciate, don't forget to like, subscribe. Understand that on Mondays, we talk about business, things that you have to do in business that you can stay in business. If you never saw us on Monday, we kind of go over that. I even kind of show, because right now people are losing money in their margins because they keep doing advertisement and they don't adjust their prices. On Wednesday, we on the show at CFS Studios, we talk about stock market. On Friday, it's another business and the Slate Show, where we talk about things going on. So that is CFS Studios. It is a media company out of Omaha, Nebraska. And we have news, business, finance, and entertainment. I want to thank everybody who tuned in to this. Thank everybody on Spotify, everyone who hung in to ask the questions. Oh, I got one question. Okay. All right. Here's a question. If you were my child, what would be the first thing that you would tell me? Here's the answer. If you was my child, I would literally take my bank statement and I would give you a yellow Sharpie, and I'll give you my bank statement, a yellow Sharpie, and I'll show you all the money I spent. And your first paycheck will be based on taking a yellow highlighter, not a Sharpie, a yellow highlighter, I have one yellow and one blue. Okay. And I'll give you the yellow highlighter that for everything you saw me pay that was not a core thing for to live in the house. I mean, period. If it means water bill, light bill, light bill, then you have your I'll put in there the your mortgage, and that would be like your core. The reason that would be for yellow, which means it lets us know that if that's not taken care of, it's gonna affect us. Then on the blue side, I will put in there like if you have security system, cable, um, if I had security system, cable, if let me see something else, if I had pest control or termite control, or grass lawn care service, those are things that go back to the core. Now, outside of that, car insurance will actually be in yellow as well. If I have any car insurance or car payments, that's all yellow. Okay. Everything outside of those two colors that stay on white on the paper, find a way to cut the cost so I can save more money. That'll be the first thing I tell you to do. So take your own, grab your bank statement, literally, and you take the core items, your rent or your mortgage that you pay. And then from there, you're gonna take your water, you're gonna take your lights. After you take your water and lights, you're gonna have your car, and then you're gonna have your car insurance. If you got a security system, that's gonna be a different color. But we're gonna take that core item, and then that's going to be yellow. Then the next one's going to be blue. Everything out of that is cost you can cut. Now, somebody will be like, well, what happens to gas? Isn't that gas? You don't have to drive that much. I keep trying to tell people, figure out the fastest way from A to B, and then you take that. And I can assure you, if that's all you do, get from A to B, and every time you move, you're only moving so that you can generate more money, you won't spend as much money driving around or going to see people. If you do that, that would be the first way that you start cutting your costs and start keeping your money. Because remember, if you're going to be wealthy and you're going to say, well, I'm not going to just let all the bad people, because they are using a standard, guys. They're using a money standard that we're ignoring. They look at money as the product. We look at money as not having the value as the item that we want. They look at money as being more important than the leverage. So for most Americans that grew up like myself, anyone else that um, not rich, then automatically you mostly see money as an ends to get the item that you want, or do the things you want to do, or travel the place you want to travel. That's not what the wealthy people look at it as. Money itself is the product, and it will generate money. For us, it's just the ends to get what we want. Well, that will cause you to always be subjected to someone dictating your life. And if you don't want your life being dictated, it's time for you to allow yourself to change. I see you guys tomorrow. For some more information, thank you for tuning in today. Thank you, everybody on Spotify. I don't see any more questions, so I'm not going to worry about that aspect of it. But don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.